How many remember Vlone? Vlone was a New York-based streetwear brand created by A$AP Rocky, A$AP Bari, Playboi Carti, Ian Connor, and A$AP K. Vlone was launched relatively recently during the days where the first-gen brands had began to bow out, paving the way for the second-gen of streetwear, if you will. But a meteoric rise to the top of the streetwear game was matched with a disastrous plummet to the bottom. And Vlone is not today what it used to be. Why is that? Let's find out. I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com, and this is the rise and fall of Vlone. But before we dive in though, let's hear it for our sponsor, us. Are you tired of the bland ambiance at home and want to add more personality? Well, at TakeFlight214.com, we offer custom canvas prints, aluminum artwork, posters, and much more. We've been in business for over 15 years offering high quality wall art, apparel, and promotional materials. Any size, any design, we got you covered. Thousands of designs in stock, and we also offer printable files that you can download directly after ordering. So stop by today and check out our aluminum artwork. It's high gloss, high quality, and extremely durable. So if you want to add more life to your living space and have been looking for the perfect artwork to do so, then stop by TakeFlight214.com today, because blank walls are boring. You know the routine. Smash that like button because it helps us out in the YouTube search ranking, and we'll love you for it. But now, let's jump right in. Vlone was started in 2011 in Harlem by the previous mentioned gaggle of friends. A$AP K would leave the brand and the group all together early on as the development of the clothing line continued without him. According to Bari, Vlone is a lifestyle brand that doesn't belong in either the high fashion or streetwear side, even though we all kind of know which direction they always leaned in. A$AP Rocky always had a thing for fashion, and ever since before the days he blew up. We discussed how he met Shane Oliver of Hood by Air in our Rise and Fall of HBA video, but without going into that whole thing again, Rocky was always part of the New York fashion scene, and A$AP Bari shared this affinity. It was actually Bari though who leaned more towards fashion than music, but with this common interest in mind, they decided to start their own clothing line. Rocky had obviously expressed his interest in being a part of a streetwear line, as we also covered in our Hood by Air video. He kind of tried to strong arm his way into the HBA, but to no avail. I guess at some point they thought rather than trying to get into one of the brands that they were wearing, why not start their own? Among the brands that Rocky was a fan of at the time was Blackscale, and although it's not confirmed, I think this love could have inspired the naming of the brand that he would later be a part of. While conspiring the idea, they would settle on the name Vlone, which is a play on the word alone, only the A is flipped and altered into a V a la Blackscale style. The brand's slogan was Live Vlone, Die Vlone, a reference from the movie Donnie Darko, a psychological thriller and where the main character is having a conversation with a woman and the line "Every living thing dies alone" is spoken. This dark and foreboding phrase would ironically be fitting when discussing the downfall of the brand, but we'll get to that. Although the brand was founded in 2011, the first 2 years they didn't drop anything to the public. Bari had up until this point only been giving away stuff to his friends and group mates. In 2014, A$AP Rocky released a song called Riot Rave. When the time came to shoot the video, they decided that they wanted to have a scene where tons of kids all appeared to be in the midst of a riot while wearing Vlone t-shirts. They put out a call for kids to meet up in a specific location for the shoot. Thing is, since the shirts hadn't been released to the public yet, they needed to hand them out for the video shoot. But the problem is they didn't want the kids to keep the shirts, so they took up everyone's ID with the idea of holding on to them till the video was over. Then in order to get your ID back, you had to turn the shirt back in. Things started out fine enough. There was a fake cop car that was supposed to be destroyed for the video, but the excitement of the moment soon became a bit too much and things got out of hand. Before you knew it, people were smashing up other cars, including taxis, a non-prop cop car, and some poor bastard's Ferrari. Once order was restored and the shoot was finally shut down, they realized that about 30 kids valued the shirts more than they did their IDs and had taken off, leaving their IDs behind. By this time, the cat was officially out of the bag. They decided it was finally time to release to the public. Bari played it right by keeping the pieces limited so as to not saturate the market too much. Around this time, A$AP Rocky was reaching a peak in his rap career and people viewed him as a street fashion icon, so having not only a cosign but affiliation from him also helped enormously. The first drop consisted of the standard tees and hoodies, one featuring the Friends design, which would become one of their most popular designs of all. According to A$AP Bari, the minus sign means zero, translating to zero friends, or another way of saying alone, Vlone. The Friends imprint was one of the brand's most memorable designs and became an important part of the history of Vlone. The next step was to take it international. They got more into cut and sew and began selling in pop-up shops as A$AP Bari took the Vlone project on a worldwide tour. Stops included New Orleans, Texas, Tokyo, and more. They also did collaborations with Off-White and Fragment Design. Vlone was different from the preceding brands in that they never focused on opening a flagship store. Instead, their focus was solely on online sales. A huge milestone was reached when the brand landed the collaboration with Nike. This was at the beginning of the streetwear and to mainstream era, so Nike, fresh off the success of the Off-White collab, was willing to work with such a new brand because of the buzz and the connections that they had. The launch of the Nike by Vlone Air Force One happened during one of New York Fashion Week's busier pop-up events on February 10th in 2017 at a shop on 116th Street in Harlem. Mind you, this was right up the block from where the A$AP mob spent most of their time coming up in their younger days, so this had to be huge for them. They came up with a few different variations of the shoe, one being a black and white high top and another being a low top black and orange. The inspiration came from the New York Knicks colorway. Not too long after the Nike collaboration, Vlone Clothing went on to design a Tupac capsule, paying homage to the iconic rapper. Ironically though, this would play Nostradamus to where the brand would ultimately end up at. But again, we'll get to that later. The capsule consisted of a limited edition collection honoring the legacy and life of Tupac. They played the timing smart by making this all happen ahead of the movie All Eyes on Me, which was one of the most anticipated movies of that summer. That subsequently went on to blow ass, I might add. The movie, that is, not the collection. Building off this momentum, Bari thought it was a good idea to take his show on the road to the Paris Fashion Week in 2017. But little did he nor any of us know, this would actually mark the beginning of the end of the brand as we know it. The pieces displayed were basically a high-end rendition of what Vlone had become known for. Lots of denim, lots of leather. The collection was cool, but the show didn't land quite right. They started late, they got flack for audio issues, and ultimately didn't leave the best first impression in their inaugural show across the pond. But this show bomb wouldn't be the worst thing to happen to A$AP Bari and Vlone. Bari was arrested in May 2018 at Heathrow Airport on charges of sexual assault, stemming from a video that had recently surfaced showing Bari's guerrilla game as being, shall we say, a bit too aggressive. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'd like to keep this video monetized, but if you'd like to learn more info on the case, the news reports are out there and there's still video floating around too. But needless to say, this was a terrible look. This was the height of the Me Too era, and accusations like this were getting more public attention. And the fact that there was a video that was so damning, there was really no way Bari could come out of this thing clean. At this time, the media began to turn on Bari, and Rocky and Ferg even publicly released statements of how they didn't co-sign the behavior and began to distance themselves as well. It didn't stop here though. Nike would eventually announce that they were no longer interested in doing business with Bari nor Vlone going forward. They were basically blackballed from any future major fashion events, and the press was horrible. Which brings us back to the Donnie Darko line that I mentioned earlier. Every living thing dies alone. Bari was basically at the height of his run. Vlone was killing the streets, ASAP Mob was killing the charts, he had a deal with Nike, a foot in the door with the high fashion world. This would all come crashing down. Vlone and Bari were metaphorically dying with no one by their side. In 2019, ASAP Bari would plead guilty. He was surprisingly only slapped with a fine of a few $1,000s, but ultimately the damage had already been done. He was still a part of the ASAP mob, but the relationship seemed strained. And although things couldn't have been going worse for Bari, he would press on with Vlone as a brand. He would go on to produce a series of music artist collabs, the likes of Nav, The Weeknd, Pop Smoke, and NBA Youngboy. How the mighty had fallen. Vlone went from collabs with Nike and shows at Paris Fashion Week to a glorified tour merch designer. That's not to say it hasn't been lucrative for Bari though. The Youngboy shirts were said to have done crazy numbers, selling out in 3 days and netting $3 million. When looking at the rise and subsequent fall of Vlone, it could be looked at in one or two ways. Either a great waste of potential, or a star that burned so bright it burned out quick. It's hard to feel sorry for ASAP Bari once you see the video, but it is unfortunate that his actions would bring down the entire brand for all the other people that were involved in working on it. At the end of the day, Vlone is still around and leaning heavy into the collabs. Some of the designs are cool, but at the price point that they're asking for what's basically a ginned up artist tee, it's kind of on the outrageous side. But what do you think? Were you a fan of Vlone? Would you still wear the stuff today? Hit us up in the comment section and let us know what you thought. Also, if you liked the video, then hit the like button because it does help us out in the YouTube search ranking so that we can get more people viewing our videos and continue to expand our reach. And if you want to be updated every time we drop a new episode of A Rise and Fall of Streetwear Brand, then hit the notification bell after you hit the subscribe button, and this way you'll be dinged whenever we drop a new episode. But with that being said, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com signing out until next time. Peace.